Romans chapter 1. This is from Paul, a slave of the Anointed One Jesus, who has been called to be a dispatched envoy, having been cut off for Almighty's good message, that he promised beforehand through his prophets in the pure writings, about his Son who, according to the flesh, came from David's seed, and who, according to the Spirit of purity, was designated the Son of Almighty, with power by his resurrection from among the dead, Jesus, the Anointed One, our Master, through whom we have obtained favor and our responsibility of being envoys dispatched so that there might be obedience to the faith among all the pagans, on behalf of his name, Jesus, among whom you also are the called ones, who belong to Jesus, the Anointed One. To all who are Almighty's dearly loved ones in Rome, the called and pure ones. May favor and peace be yours from Almighty our Father and the Master Jesus, the Anointed One. First of all, I am continually thanking my Almighty through Jesus, the Anointed One, for all of you, because your faith is continually being announced throughout the whole world. For Almighty, to whom I am continually offering divine service with my spirit by spreading the good message about his Son, is my witness of how I am continually making mention of you without ceasing, always in my prayers petitioning that if somehow it is what Almighty wants, that I might now at last be prospered to come to you. For I am desiring to see you, so that I might share some spiritual favor with you, so that you might be solidly established, that is, so that while I am among you, I might be encouraged together with you by means of each other's faith, both yours and mine. Now I don't want you to be ignorant, brothers and sisters, that often I have determined to come to you, and have been prevented even until now, so that I might have some fruit among you also, just as among the rest of the pagans. I am a debtor to both Greek-speaking and non-Greek-speaking people, to both the wise and the foolish. This is why, for my part, I have this eagerness to spread the good message also to you who are in Rome. For I am not ashamed of the good message, for it is Almighty's power for the salvation from destruction of every one who is continually having faith in it, to the Jew first, and also to the non-Jew. For in it is revealed Almighty's method for making people right and just before him, a method that is based on faith and results in faith, just as it has been written, "Now the person who is just and right must be continually living on the basis of faith." Habakkuk 2, verse 4. For Almighty's anger is being revealed from heaven against all the lack of devotion and injustice of the humans who are holding back the truth by their injustice. Since what is known about Almighty is apparent to them, because Almighty has made it apparent to them. For ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his constant power, and mighty nature have been clearly seen, since they can be comprehended through the things that he has made, so that they are without a defense. For although they knew Almighty, they didn't esteem him as Almighty or give him thanks. Rather, they became involved in their meaningless reasonings, and their unintelligent hearts became clouded with darkness. Asserting that they were wise, they became stupid, and exchanged the esteem of the non-decaying Almighty for images having the likeness of things that are subject to decay, humans, birds, four-legged animals, and reptiles. For this reason, Almighty delivered them over to the uncleanliness that is in the desires of their hearts, to be dishonoring their bodies among themselves. For they exchanged Almighty's truth for a lie, and were devoted to and offered divine service to the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed for the remaining ages, the present age and the last age. Let it be true. For this reason Almighty delivered them over to dishonorable passions, so that their females exchanged their natural use for an unnatural one. Likewise, their males also left the natural use of the female, and became inflamed in their cravings for one another, males with males, practicing acts that aren't respectable, and getting back for themselves the repayment that they ought to have for their going astray. Now as they didn't approve of continually acknowledging Almighty fully, Almighty delivered them over to having disapproved minds, to be doing those things that aren't suitable, being filled with all kinds of injustice, those things that aren't suitable, being filled with all kinds of injustice, wickedness, badness, and greed. They are bulging with envy, murder, conflict, fraud, and bad attitudes. They are gossipers, speakers against one another, detesters of Almighty, those filled with outrage, proud, arrogant, inventors of bad things, unpersuadable by their parents, unintelligent, failing to fulfill agreements, without natural affection, and unmerciful. Although they know full well about Almighty's just sentence, that those who are practicing such things deserve death, in the fiery destruction of the second death. Note, the second death is destruction in the lake of fire, Revelation 20, verses 14 through 15, which is also referred to symbolically as Gehenna. They are not only continually doing them, but also are continually approving of those who are practicing them. Romans chapter 2. For this reason, human, you are without a defense, whoever is judging others. For in whatever you are judging another, you are condemning yourself. For you who are judging are practicing the same things. Yet we are aware that Almighty's judgment against those who are practicing such things is according to truth. Yet do you regard this, human? You who are judging those who are practicing such things and are doing them yourself, that you will escape Almighty's judgment? Or do you despise the riches of His kindness, tolerance, and patience? Are you ignorant that Almighty's kindness should lead you to a change in thoughts and feelings? Yet because of your hardness and unchanging heart, you are storing up anger for yourself on the day of anger, the day of the last age, when the justice of Almighty's judgment will be revealed, since He will pay each one according to his works. Musical Composition 62, verse 12. To those, on the one hand, who by endurance in doing good works are continually seeking esteem, honor, and what is never going to decay, He will give life in the last age. Yet to those, on the other hand, who have a selfish interest and are unpersuaded by the truth, yet are persuaded by injustice, there will be anger and rage, resulting in sentencing to destruction by the fire of the second death. Revelation 20, verses 14 through 15. There will be oppression and distress on the sentient being of every human who is continually producing bad work, to the you first, and also to the non-you. Yet esteem, honor, and peace to everyone who is continually doing good work, to the you first, and also to the non-you. For there is no favoritism with Almighty. For whoever has done things that are wrong without the law will also be destroyed, in the destruction, without the law. And whoever has done things that are wrong under the law will be judged by the law. For it isn't the listeners of the law who are just and right with Almighty, but it is the doers of the law who will be justified. For when the pagans, who don't have the law, are continually doing by nature what the law demands, they are a law to themselves. Even though they don't have the law, they are continually displaying the work of the law written on their hearts. Their consciences are also testifying, and the things held in regard by them are alternately accusing or defending them. This, according to the good message that I bring, is what will happen on the day of the last age, when Almighty is going to judge the hidden things of the humans through Jesus, the Anointed One. This, according to the good message that I bring, is what will happen on the day of the last age, when Almighty is going to judge the hidden things of humans through Jesus, the Anointed One. Notice, if you are going by the name you, and are resting on the law, and are boasting about being in union with Almighty, and are knowing what He wants, and are approving of the things that are of a consequence, because you have been instructed from the law, and if you have confidence in yourself that you should be a guide to the blind, a light to those in the dark, a discipliner of the unintelligent, a teacher of youngsters, since you have in the law the form of knowledge and truth, then you who are teaching another, aren't you teaching yourself? You who are proclaiming that a person shouldn't steal, are you stealing? You who are saying that a person shouldn't have extramarital sexual intercourse, are you having extramarital sexual intercourse? You who are abhorring idols, are you robbing the sacred place? You who are boasting about the law, are you dishonoring Almighty by your stepping beyond the boundaries of the law? For just as it has been written, the name of Almighty is being slandered among the pagans because of you. Ezekiel 36, verse 20. For circumcision, on the one hand, is of benefit, if you are practicing the law. Yet on the other hand, if you are a person who steps beyond the boundaries of the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. So then, if the uncircumcised person is maintaining the just requirements of the law, won't his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Now the uncircumcised person, who is completing by nature what the law demands, will judge you, who with the writing and circumcision are the person who steps beyond the boundaries of the law. For it isn't the person who appears to be a you who is, nor is it even the person who appears to be circumcised because of his flesh who is, but it is the person whose being a you is hidden, and whose circumcision belongs to the heart, by the Spirit, not by the writing, whose praise isn't from humans, but from Almighty. Romans chapter 3. So then, what does the you have in abundance over others? Or what is the benefit of circumcision? Much in every manner. First of all, because they were entrusted with Almighty's words. What then, if some were unfaithful? Their unfaithfulness won't nullify Almighty's faithfulness to His word, will it? May it not come to that. Now Almighty must be continually true, even if every human is a liar, just like it has been written, so that you might be justified in what you say, and will conquer when you are being judged. Musical Composition 51, verse 4. Now if our injustice is commending the rightness and justness of Almighty, what shall we declare? That Almighty is unjust to bring anger upon us? I say this in human terms. May it not come to that. Otherwise, how will Almighty judge the world? Yet if through my lie, Almighty's truthfulness has overflowed and resulted in his esteem, why am I also still being judged as a wrongdoer? Now why not say, just as we are being slandered, and just as some are affirming that we are saying, we should do bad things, so that there might come good things. Their judgment is just. What then? Are we privileged over others? Positively not. For we have previously charged that both yous and non-yous are all under wrongdoing. Just as it has been written, there isn't anyone who is continually doing things that are just and right, not even one. There isn't anyone who is continually understanding. There isn't anyone who is continually seeking out Almighty. All have avoided him, and they have at the same time become unprofitable. There isn't anyone who is continually doing kindness. There isn't even one. Musical Composition 14, verses 1 through 3. Their throats are burial vaults that have been opened. They keep defrauding with their tongues. Musical Composition 5, verse 9. The venom of poisonous cobra snakes is under their lips. Musical Composition 140, verse 3. Their mouths are loaded with curses and bitterness. Musical Composition 10, verse 7. Their feet are swift to pour out blood. Ruin and miserableness mark their paths, and they haven't known the path of peace. Isaiah 59, verses 7 through 8. There is no deep respect for Almighty before their eyes. Musical Composition 36, verse 1. Now we are aware that whatever the law says, it is speaking to those who are under the law, so that every mouth might be shut, and the entire world might become subservient to Almighty's just verdict. Because on the basis of works of the law, no flesh at all will be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the full knowledge of wrongdoing. Yet now, apart from the law, a method from Almighty for making people right and just before him is apparent. As the law and the prophets are testifying, even a method from Almighty for making people right and just before him by means of their faith in Jesus, the Anointed One, for all those who are continually having faith. For there is no distinction, for all have done things that are wrong, and are continually falling behind and in need of esteem from Almighty. And all are being justified freely by his favor, through the ransom payment provided by the Anointed One Jesus. For Almighty determined to have him be a shelter of mercy by his blood, by means of faith, to display Almighty's rightness and justness, because of his passing over of the penalties for wrongdoings that have been occurring previously during his tolerance, with a view towards displaying his rightness and justness during the current time period, to show that he himself is just and right, and that he is the justifier of the person who has faith in Jesus. So then, where is the boasting? It has been locked out. By means of what kind of law? Of works? No, but by means of the law of faith. For we are regarding a human to be justified by faith apart from works of the law. Or is Almighty only the Almighty of the Jews? Isn't he also the Almighty of the pagans? Yes, of the pagans also, since there is one Almighty, and he will justify those who are circumcised based on their faith, and those who are uncircumcised by means of their faith. So then, are we nullifying the law by means of faith? May it not come to that. No, we are establishing the law. Romans chapter 4. So then, what shall we declare that Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh, has found? For if Abraham was justified on the basis of his works, he has something to boast about, but not when facing Almighty. For what does the writing say? And Abraham had faith in Almighty, and it was regarded to him as being right and just before Almighty. Genesis 15 verse 6. Now to the person who is continually working, his wage isn't regarded as a favor, but as a debt. Yet to the person who isn't continually working, yet is continually having his faith in the one who is justifying the undevoted person, his faith is regarded to him as being right and just before Almighty. It is just like when David tells us about the happiness of the human, whom Almighty regards as being right and just before him, apart from works. Happy is the person whose lawless ways have been forgiven, and whose wrongdoings have been covered. Happy is the man whose wrongdoing the Master shall by no means regard. Musical Composition 32, verses 1 through 2. So then, is this happiness only for those who are circumcised, or is it also for those who are uncircumcised? For we say, faith was regarded to Abraham as being right and just before Almighty. So then, under what circumstances was it regarded as being right and just before Almighty? While he was circumcised or uncircumcised? It wasn't while he was circumcised, but while he was uncircumcised. Now he obtained the sign of circumcision as a seal of his being right and just before Almighty, by the faith that he had while he was uncircumcised, so that he might be the father of all the uncircumcised people, who are continually having faith, so that their faith might be regarded to them as being right and just before Almighty, and the father of the circumcised people, who are not only circumcised, but who are also continually walking a straight line in the footprints of the faith that our father Abraham had while he was uncircumcised. For the promise to Abraham, or to his seed or descendants, that he would inherit the world, wasn't by means of the law, but by means of his being right and just before Almighty through faith. For if those who are depending on the law are heirs, faith has come to be nothing, and the promise has been nullified. For the law produces anger, yet where there is no law, there is no stepping beyond its boundaries. For this reason, it, or the inheritance, is on the basis of faith, so that it might be as a favor, so that the promise might be confirmed to all his seed or descendants, not only to those who are depending on the law, but also to those who are depending on the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all, just as it has been written, I have appointed you to be a father of many nations. Genesis 17, verse 5. Facing Almighty, he had faith that Almighty can bring the dead to life, and can call into existence things that don't exist. Though being beyond hope, he had faith with hope that he would become the father of many nations, according to what had been declared. This is what your seed or descendants will be. Genesis 15 verse 5. Now he didn't become weak in faith when he considered that his own body was already deadened, since he was somewhere around 100 years old, and that Sarah's uterus was also deadened. Yet he didn't doubt the promise of Almighty in unbelief, but was invigorated in faith and gave esteem to Almighty, since he was fully assured that whatever he has promised, he is also able to do. For this reason also, it was regarded to him as being right and just before Almighty. Genesis 15 verse 6. Now this, it was regarded to him, wasn't written only for him, but also for us. For it is going to be regarded to us who are continually having our faith in the one who has awakened from among the dead, Jesus, our Master, who has been delivered over for our offenses, and has been awakened for our justification. Romans chapter 5. So then, since we have been justified on the basis of faith, we are going to have peace when facing Almighty by means of our Master Jesus, the Anointed One, by means of whom also, by our faith, we have come to have access to this favor in which we stand, and we are continually boasting about the hope of sharing in Almighty's esteem. Yet not only this, but we are also continually boasting about our oppressions, since we have already noticed that this oppression is producing endurance, and this endurance approval, and this approval hope. Now this hope isn't going to cause us shame, because Almighty's love has been poured out into our hearts through the pure Spirit that has been given to us. For while we were still weak, still in accord with this time period, the Anointed One died on behalf of us undevoted people. For hardly would anyone die on behalf of a just person, though perhaps even on behalf of a good person someone might dare to die. Yet by this Almighty is commending His love to us, because while we were still wrongdoers, the Anointed One died on our behalf. More importantly then, since we have now been justified by His blood, we will be saved from the anger and sentenced to destruction through Him. For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to Almighty by means of the death of His Son, it is much more certain that since we have been reconciled, we will be saved from destruction by His life. Now not only this, but we are also continually boasting about Almighty through our Master Jesus, the Anointed One, through whom we have now obtained our reconciliation. For this reason, just as through one human, Adam, actually Eve, 1 Timothy 2 verse 14, wrongdoing entered into the world, and death through this wrongdoing. Now this is how death passed through to all humans, because all have done things that are wrong. For up to the law, wrongdoing was in the world. Yet wrongdoing isn't taken into account when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who didn't do something that is wrong, like the stepping beyond the boundaries done by Adam, who is a representation for the one who is going to come. But the favor isn't just like the offense, for while by the offense of the one person the many died, to a much greater degree did Almighty's favor and the freely given gift given by His favor through the one human Jesus, the Anointed One, become abundant to the many. Now the freely given gift isn't like the effect caused by the one person doing something that was wrong. For on the one hand, the judgment wasn't based on one offense and resulted in a verdict of condemnation to death. Yet on the other hand, the favor is based on many offenses and is going to result in a verdict of being just and right before Almighty. For while by the offense of the one person, death reigned through that one, to a much greater degree will those who are obtaining the abundance of his favor and his freely given gift of being right and just before him reign in life through the one, Jesus, the Anointed One. So therefore, as it was through one offense that there resulted for all humans condemnation to death, so too it was through one just action that there resulted for all humans a method for making one just and right before Almighty, which brings life in the last age. For just as through the one human's disobedience the many were designated wrongdoers, so also through the one's obedience the many will be designated just and right. Now the law came in along the way, so that the offense might increase. Yet where wrongdoing increased, favor was overflowing, so that, just as wrongdoing reigned in the sphere of death, so also favor might reign by means of being right and just before Almighty, and result in life in the last age, by means of Jesus, the Anointed One, our Master. Romans chapter 6. So then, what shall we declare? That we should be persisting in wrongdoing so that favor might increase? May it not come to that. How shall we, who have died to wrongdoing, still live in it? Or are you ignorant that whoever has been immersed into union with the Anointed One, Jesus, has been immersed into his death? So then, we have been buried together with him by means of immersion into his death, so that just as the Anointed One has been awakened from among the dead by means of the Father's esteem, so we too should walk in the new sphere of life. For if we have been planted by being buried or immersed together with him in the likeness of his death, then we will also be together with him in the likeness of his resurrection. Since we are knowing this, that our old humanity has been fastened to the stake together with him, to nullify our bodies to wrongdoing, so that we might no longer be continually slaving for wrongdoing. For the one who has died has been set free from the power of wrongdoing. Now if we have died together with the Anointed One, we are continually believing that we will also live together with him in the last age, since we have already noticed that the Anointed One, who has been awakened from among the dead, is never going to die again. Death is no longer like a master over him. For the death that he died to wrongdoing once for all time. Yet the life that he lives is continually living for Almighty. So you too must be continually regarding yourselves to be, on the one hand, dead to wrongdoing, yet on the other hand, living for Almighty through union with the Anointed One, Jesus. So then, wrongdoing must stop reigning in your dying bodies, so that you are obeying its desires. You must stop presenting the parts of your bodies to wrongdoing as weapons for doing what is unjust. Rather, you must present yourselves to Almighty as persons who are alive from among the dead, and the parts of your bodies to Almighty as weapons for doing what is right and just. For wrongdoing won't be like a master over you, for you aren't under the law, but under favor. What then? Should we do things that are wrong, since we aren't under the law, but under favor? May it not come to that. Aren't you aware that you are slaves to the one to whom you are presenting yourselves for obedience? You are slaves to the one whom you obey, whether it is slavery to that which is wrong, which is going to result in death, in the fiery destruction of the second death. Note, the second death is destruction in the lake of fire. Revelation 20, verses 14 through 15, which is also referred to symbolically as Gehenna. Or to obedience, which is going to result in being right and just before Almighty. Now thanks be to Almighty, that though you are slaves of that which is wrong, you have now from the heart obeyed teaching that is representative of that which is delivered over to you. Now having been freed from that which is wrong, you became slaves of that which is right and just. I say this in human terms, or slaves, because of the weakness of your flesh. For just as you presented the parts of your bodies as slaves to that which was unclean and lawless, which resulted in more lawlessness, so now you must present the parts of your bodies as slaves to that which is right and just, which is going to result in purity. For when you were slaves of that which is wrong, you were free with respect to that which is right and just. So then, what fruit were you having then? Those things which you are now ashamed, for the completion of those things is death in the fiery destruction. Yet now that you have been freed from that which is wrong, and have become slaves of Almighty, the fruit, or being right and just before Almighty, that you are going to have, is going to result in purity from that which is wrong, is death in the fiery destruction. Yet the favor from Almighty is life in the last age, through union with the Anointed One, Jesus, our Master.